Hello, everybody. Hi. Okay, so this is the chapter 6. So, chapter 6 is about wastewater treatments or wastewater management. Okay, so this is the chapter 6 in our topics, and then so you've been learned previously on the water. So what is hydrology cycles, and then you learn about water treatment. So now today's we are going to work into wastewater. So usually it's when you're after using your water, have you ever think where the water goes? What happens to the water before it go to the sea? Okay, so just imagine if you after you flush from your toilet, so you've been used your toilet and then you flush. If it's directly go to the drainage system, so what will happen? And then from drainage system, it will go to the river, and then from river will go to the sea. So and then you eat the fish, everything's from there, right? So this is the problems, okay? So when we talk about wastewater management or wastewater treatments, that means we will treat our wastewaters, okay? Kita akan merawat air sisa kita, okay? So we will treat our wastewater, and then what is the procedure or process that we treat, and then how we do it. And then as you might always heard about that from KLs or Selangor, there is always a water pollution that cause all the water system being shut down. So it's some things like this. Okay, right, right. So this is today motivations. I hope you guys, maybe you've been facing like some things that not really happy or anything, and then you might feel down because you have to stay at home to do your online learnings. Okay, but then I hope that you guys can be more optimistic. Okay, so things that everything is going well, no matter how hard the life is, it still will happen. It will guide you to a good place or good chances. Okay, so opportunities are many, the world is great, I'm a winner, something wondering is going to take place, wonderful, I'm successful, I will fulfill my dream, and everything is fine. Okay, so just be an optimist thinker. Okay, so this is our learning's objective for today. So there is ClO2 and also ClO3. First, you need to learn how to explain the important element in the environment. So the today important element is from wastewater. Okay. Secondly is to analyze the current issues that relates to the environment. So you must know how to analyze it. So when you heard there is a factory release some of the wastewaters that the processed waters to the river, so make the rivers changing the color. So that's one you need to know how to analyze. So you can set it as the wastewater pollutions. Okay, so this is the total process that involving. So as you guys knowing, you will see here. Okay, okay. So this is step one. From your house, after you use, you will flush it. So this is step two. And then you will see this thing. If you stay in a residence area, then you will always see it in your residence area. Dekat setiap tapak perumahan mesti akan ada skills, a bigger skills one. Okay. And then you will coming to the cold generations engine. So you will process it here, also here, and then it will release to the sea. Okay. So what sorry. So what happened if we didn't have this thing? So all this water will be directly to the sea. So what will happen to all of us? Okay, right? Okay, so do you know what is this? Do you still remember? So this is the water cycles. So the rains will come down to the lakes, and then we will use, so those water that in the lakes, we will treat it as the treatment plants, in the water treatment plants, and then it will distribute to our usage to the premise. And then after we use it, will send to the sewage treatment plants where we use it to treat our waste water. And then after treatments, it will release to the sea, and then from the sea, we will come back to the water cycle again. So this is the biggest water cycles. The ones that you learn in chapter 4 is hydrology cycle. So this is the water cycle. Okay. So what is the water and what is the wastewater, and then what are the difference between water and wastewater? Do you know what is the difference? Okay. So anyone can answer to me what is water? Something to drink, something to use. Okay, but then the more correct definitions we would say water is actually a combination of H2O. So two hydrogens and one oxygen. Okay, so you will see here. Water is something that 70% of our earth is consists of water, and then 3% is the fresh water and 97% is the saline water. So actually, do we have a lot of water to use? No. For our earth, there are only 3% that we can use for our drinks to do anything. That is the fresh water. So the rest of 97% is actually saline water. Saline water is something that's salty, air garam, air masin. Okay? So water is a tasteless, odorless, and colorless liquid. So water is the chemical substance with chemical formula H2O. One molecule of water has two hydrogen atoms covalently bonded to a single oxygen atom. So from this figure you can see. Okay. And then what is wastewater? So what is wastewater? So when we mention about wastewater, it's just not a sewage. So when we say about wastewater, it's not only the waters that comes from your toilet. It's not only sewage waters. In Malay, we call it as air sisa. Air sisa. So the sisa means some things that you don't want. Okay, so the waste is some things that you don't want. So means the wastewater is actually include a liquid waste that discharged by the domestic residents, commercial properties, industrial, and agriculture, and can encompass a wide range of potentials, contaminants, and concentrations. Okay. In the most common usage, it refers to the municipal wastewater that contains a broad spectrum of contaminants resulting from the mixing of wastewater from different sources. Okay, so this is the comparison between the water and wastewater. So water is clean, wastewater is something that polluted. And then the water is something that coming from water supply, so from your tap water. But then for wastewater is something that effluence, which is out, going out, that you don't want, you throw away. Okay. So the source of the water is actually we have the surface water and also the groundwater. And then for the wastewater is coming from toilet, kitchen, sink, your laundry machines, your washing machines, and then your car wash, all these things. Okay. So water consists of 99.9% of water and minerals, but then for wastewater, it consists of solid and also organic waste. Okay. So why we must treat our wastewater? Okay. Why we must treat it? Why we can't just leave it? Why we can't just leave it to the rivers? As the river can clean it by itself, right? Why? Why not? Okay. First, we will need to think about our fisheries. So the clean water is critical to plants and animals that live in the water. So this is important to the fishery industry, sport fishing, euthanasia, and future generations. Secondly is for our wildlife habitats. So our river and oceans waters teem with life that depends on the shorelines, beach and marsh. They are critical habitats for hundreds of species of fish and other aquatic life. So migratory waterbirds use the areas for resting and feeding. Okay. Thirdly, is actually used for recreations and quality of life. Do you like to go for swimming, do you like to go for river? Oh, no, beach side for your holidays? Okay, so this is for recreations and also quality of life. Some people might like their house to build beside some lake, so you have a good views. Okay, so water is a great playground for us, and then the scenic and recreational value of our waters are reason many people choose to live where they do. So the visitors are drawn to water activities such as swimming, fishing, boating, and picnicking. Lastly is definitely for the health concern. Okay. Lastly, for sure is come back to us where which is we can say it as a more selfish things. So it's as a human. So for health concerns. So if it is not properly clean, the water can carry the disease. Since we live, work, and play so close to the water, so the harmful bacteria have to be removed to make sure the water is safe. So, and then you can see at the down here, the major aims of a wastewater treatment is to remove as much as the suspended solid as possible before the remaining water called effluent is discharged back to the environment, right? Okay. So, do you know what is this picture show you? So this picture it shows you how the bodies of the water can serve so many purposes. So this is one of the large marina of pleasure spot on the Lake Lanius, north of the Atlanta. Okay, so the water of the Lake Lanius not only provide a drinking water and electricity for hundreds thousands of people, but also is a water playground for many thousands of people that all year around. Okay, and then the lake is a reservoir that built by the U.S. Army, and then it used for by more peoples each year than the others corporations recreation sites. So this is the perfect examples how one bodies of water can be have many use. Okay, so when we say about wastewater, as previously, if you still remember, we still have the factors of consumptions. So what is the factors that make us use more waters? And then also we actually having the factors that influencing the wastewater flow rates. Okay, so the factors that influence. So just try to give some of your ideas or think about that. What are the factors that will increase our wastewater? Okay, just think about it. Okay, right. So first of all is the source of the waters. So where the water's coming. If the water's coming from house, it definitely should be less compared to those coming from the factories or those industrial area or commercial areas. Okay. Secondly is the populations. If you have a lots of people in one place compared to less people, so for sure the more people will create more waste water. Okay, infiltrations. Why we mentions about infiltrations? Because some of our piping system is a combined system. In the next, you will learn it. It's a combined system. So when there is a rainfall, so all the waters will infiltrate and go into the piping system, and then this will increase the volumes of the wastewater. And then type of the sewage system. So it also depends on which kind of type that we are using. And then lastly is the combinations of waste. So why we care about this factor on the wastewater treatments? Because the more of the wastewater we receive, that means we need more system to support and to treat it. So it just like when you receive a lot of workload, a lot of people, okay, you're having a lot of boss, okay? As example, you have a lot of boss that will give you a lot of work, each one giving you one. So you have five to complete. Compared to your friends, only have one boss and then only one job. So this is the things, all right? Finally is the season. So usually during a wet seasons or dry seasons, you are having a different one. During a hot season, you will bath more, you will change your clothes more often. So all of this will is a contributes to the wastewater. Okay, So you can see each of its now. So for the source of water, mostly the liquid waste by the domestic residents, commercial properties, industrial and agriculture will be discharged as a wastewater. Human discharge their urine and then the natural waste and also the sweat. From human activities such as cooking and washing, so 70 to 80% from the water supplies will be wastewater and go into the sewerage system. So for the populations, you will see here, the human population is one of the main factors that influencing the wastewater flow rate. So when you're having a high population, so it means that the wastewater volumes will be high. And it is different between one country to another country. So think about it, why? Right. So this is a water consumed according to the categories. So when we're having what how we identify it for those who are having the high populations is actually 300 liters per capita per day. For Malaysians, we design it for is 225. Okay, so you will see. Okay, so when we say about infiltration, it's not all the sewage enter the sewage system will depart at the wastewater treatment plants. So might be a leakage at the joint or any part of the sewage. And then also from the soil to the sewage, and then the sewage will leakage and then back to the soil again. Okay, so you will see here. So here is the infiltrations. When the rainwater that enters the sanitary sewage through the hole or manhole cover, and then it will coming in and then will go to the wastewater facility, right? And then also this one, so you can see we're having two system, okay? And then all those crack pipings and then some root of the trees, okay? So this is the main holes, the connected foundation drains. Okay, so type of the sewage system where we have the combined sewage and also the separate sewage. So when we combine, it means those water from the rainwaters at the roadside is actually combined with our piping from our house. So that once you will having received more water compared to only from the house. So if for separate system, it will becomes the low volumes, right? So combinations of the waste, so the flow rate also depends on the system that we're choosing, and then it depends on the domestic waste or industrial waste. So during the seasons that influence water consumption. So during a summer season, it will increase the water consumptions compared to the monsoon season. And then also during the public holidays, school holidays also increase the water consumption. So when your water consumption is high, it's automatically your wastewater volume also will be increased. Okay, so this is the characteristic of the wastewater. So there are three types of the characteristic. As usual, we will define it into three types. So the first one will be the physical. So those can be detected by using the physical sense. So using your eye, your nose, your mouth, your hand, or your ear. Okay, so for chemical ones, is those can be detected using the chemical test. And then for biological ones is using the biological experimental test. And then from these figures, you can see. So the wastewater is defined as any waters that has been negatively affected in the qualities by the humans. So the characteristic for the physicals one is stabilities, kekeruhan. So the colors, odors, total solids, and also the temperatures. This is something that you can feel by your five areas, okay, five sense. Chemical characteristic is like we need to check it by using lab tests. So we have check on the chemical oxygen demand COD test, or TOC, total organic carbons, nitrogens, phosphorus, chloride, sulfates, alkalinity, pH, heavy metals, trace element, and also the pyritic pollutants. And then for biologicals one, also we need to use experimental tests or lab tests. So for biologicals, we will check on the biochemical oxygen demand BOD, oxygens that required for nitrifications, and also microbial populations. So this is the physical characteristic that we're having. So there are suspended solids, oils, color, and temperatures. So wastewater is normally 99.9% and water and 0.1% solids. If a wastewater sample is evaporated, the solid remainings are called as a total solid. Okay. So the amount of solid in the drinking water system has significant effect on the total solid concentrations in the raw sewage. It's just like how you say, okay, you have a bowl and then you put in the water and then you filter it in a filtration paper and then you go and dry it in the ovens. So before you doing this thing, you will weigh in. Timbang dulu air kertas filter tu. So you weigh the filter paper first, and then after you're doing this process, after you dry, and then you recheck again the weight of the filter papers. So you will minus it, then you will get the gram or the milligram of the total solids. Okay. Right, so for odors is the domestic sewage should have a musky odor, bubbling gas, and also the flow of odor may be indicate for the industrial waste. Okay. It will be very smelly ones. Do you like to pass by? No. So it will, there's one in UUM is very close to SML building. It's just beside the cafeteria. Okay. If you're having chance to come back again, then you can go and walk through it. Okay. For colors, the color of wastewater contain dissolved oxygens is normally gray. So black colors wastewater usually accompanied by four odors. So it containing little or no dissolved oxygens is said to be septic. So the changes in the wastewater temperature affect the settling rate, dissolved oxygens level, and also biological actions. The temperature of the wastewater becomes extremely important in certain wastewater unit operations such as sedimentation tank and recirculating filter. Okay, so for here you can read it by yourself. So it's have the detailed explanations for temperatures, colors, and then all those standards that we apply. And then you can see for colors, if the gray color, it means there is no problems with identification. But then for red, it's usually a blood or industrial waste. And then green, yellow, we have industrial waste or not planetary rates, such as paint. Okay, this is odor. So if you're having smell some things that weird, and then you can check on this which category is it. Okay, and then this is the solid. So which is suspended solid. So how we going to do this thing, and then what it means. Okay, you can read it by yourself for this. Then so for chemical characteristic, so we have the pH. So pH is to check is either is an acid base or alkaline base. Okay. So for dissolved oxygens is having a great effect on the characteristic of water. So the wastewater that has the dissolved oxygen, we call it as an aerobic, or we say it as a fresh one. So it's usually those on the surface. And then also there are wastewater that has no dissolved oxygen, we call it as anaerobics or septics. This one is usually for those old house. So once you go to the toilets, it will directly go into the septic tanks first. Okay. So oxygen's demands is the amount of oxygen that used by the bacteria or other wastewater organisms. So from here we can know how many microorganisms or bacteria that contain in the wastewaters. Okay. And then it helps us to also calculate for our next step how we're going to proceed to the next step, and then how much of chemical reagents that we need to remove it. Okay. So it is important that the organic waste be removed to protect the receiving body of the waters into which the wastewater plant is discharging. Okay, number 4 is nutrients. So nutrients are life-supporting nitrogen and phosphorus, and then they stimulate excessive growth of algae and also others aquatic plant life. They always present in the domestic wastewater and not removed during the conventional primary and secondary treatments. Finally is the toxic substance. So when I say about toxic, you actually know what is it. Okay, so I no need to give you more explanation. So where the most industrial installations use various types of toxic chemicals, the discharge of which can be harmful to the wastewater treatment process. Okay, so here also you can having your self learning, you can see from every grade of it, it's this category on where, okay, from the vehicles. Okay, so for biological characteristic, there are three. First, we will see into the bacteria. Second is the virus. Third is the parasite. So the sewage contain of vast quantity of bacteria and which are harmless to a man. But as the bacteria can also be classified according to the dissolved oxygen requirements. Okay. So the aerobic bacteria are the bacteria that require oxygens. Okay. But then we also have anaerobic bacteria that it cannot live if there is oxygen. It need no oxygen. Okay. Facultative bacteria can live either with oxygen or without oxygen. It's just like our case. We have a man, we have a woman, but then we also have some persons in between women and men. Right? So for virus, the wastewater often contain virus that may produce disease. So the outbreaks of the infections hypothesis have been traced through the water system. Okay, so the sedimentations, filtration, and disinfections, if used efficiently, usually will provide an acceptable virus removal. So lastly is the parasite. So there are also many species of the parasite that carry by the wastewater. The life cycle of each is peculiar to the given parasite. Some are dangerous to man and livestock, particularly during the certain stage of the life cycle. So amniotic dysentery is a common disease that caused by the amniotic parasite. If you still remember last time, you have to draw all these things during a biological or science class. The amniotic parasite shape is more like a shoes, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? So the chlorinations, chemical precipitations, emulsions, and sand filtration is used to ensure that protections against the parasite. Okay, so these are three types of the sewage treatment system. So we have three system. So like the water treatments last time we have two. One is filtrations and then one is softenings. Okay, so for this one we have three. So usually those that you will see in the housing area is actually a physical unit operations. And then the second ones we having is actually more to the biological process. And then for the chemical ones is more to the disinfections. All right. So you will see the explanations for physical unit operation is a treatment methods which use the applications of physical force to treat the sewage. So it's including screening, mixing, flocculation, sedimentations, filtrations, and flotation. For biological unit process is describe the methods which remove the pollutants by biological activities. So those biodegradable organic substances are converted into gases and escape to the atmosphere. And then the cell tissue is removed by the cycling. Right. So for the treatments method, which is the removal or conversions of pollutants by the additional chemical or by chemical reactions are known as chemical unit process. These include the precipitations, absorptions, and also these infections. Okay, so this is the figures and also example of the oxidation bond that you quite commonly will see. There is a pond that very big and then it's a green color. Okay, and then you will see a signboard from IWP. So this is the chemicals unit process. So we have the grit removals and then we have the chlorinations, which is under the disinfections, and the screening, grinding, secondary classifier, and then again chlorine it again, and then reduce it, and then go to the reverse. This is the total process. Okay, okay, and then So now that one is more to the generals, and then now we're going into the sewage treatment methods in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, we have a preliminary, we have a primary, we have secondary, and then we have the tertiaries. Actually, in Malaysia, we didn't have a tertiary system. Okay, so the preliminary is defined as the removal of the sewage constitute that may cause the maintenance or operations problem. So here is like more to the bigger size. So we will remove the debris, the wrecks, and then grit removal by the sedimentations and flotations. This is to protect our system later so that there is no any big items going in, so it won't create any problems to the machines or clog it or block it. Okay. So next is the primary sewage treatment. So the screening and sedimentation is remove some of the suspended solid and organic metals. So the effluents from the primary treatments will be contain high amount of the organic matter. So when we're having an organic metal, lots of organic metals, then we need a biological treatment plant. So this here we comes to the secondary sewage treatment plant. So the removal of the biodegradable organic and suspended solid mainly using the biological unit process. So these infections may be included in the secondary sewage treatment plants. For Malaysia, we have it until here. Okay, Tigery is more to the generous one. We have it like for chemicals treatment. But then so far in Malaysia, we didn't have this. Okay? So the removal of the nutrients, toxic substance include the heavy metals and further removal of suspended solid and organics. The effluence from the tigery is a high standard and suitable for the reuse. So some of you may be makers of the new water in Singapore, or some country they actually reprocess and then they reuse the wastewater and use it for the drinking. Okay, so that once they need to use the tertiary sewage treatment plants to make sure that that water can be drinked. Ours in Malaysia will only go until secondary sewage treatment plant, and then we will release it to the river. So afterwards we will have the water treatments again. So it's helped our tertiary is actually be moving to the water treatments process. Okay. So these are the stages that we have for those preliminary, primary, secondary, and also the tertiary until. So the sewage inflow, it means the water come in and then it will go through the preliminary, primary, secondary, tertiary, and then until discharge to the rivers. Okay. So sewage treatment system is there are various methods of sewage treatment system has been developed over the last 60 years to meet the needs and to protect the public health. So for urban area where the population is concentrated and the receiving environment is not able to cope with the waste discharge, so the sophisticated treatment system have evolved and produced a high quality effluent. So and then but for a small community like your housing areas or even your house, okay, we will use a more simple system. Although ever the increasing environment standards means that ever this area must be eventually install a better treatment system. Okay. Right. So for urban area, we actually having like the aerobic type and also the anaerobic type. So for aerobics, you actually need to utilize the oxygens to break down the organic matters. But then for anaerobics, we don't need any oxygens. So the breakdown of the organic matters can occur while in suspensions or on the surface of some types of the materials. So in addition, the process using ponds are also sometimes used where the large area of the lands are available. So there are some examples for these urban areas. We have activated slush, aerated lagoons, rotating biological contactors, tricking filters are the treatment system that mostly used. So I'm not going to tell you in details because it's more to for me it's a bit complicated and you might be get confused. For me, I just want you guys to learn what is wastewater treatments and then you know what is wastewater, how we categorize it as a wastewater. Okay, so for those systems, if you would like to know it more, you can go to the link that I provided to you. So it's in the IWK website, you actually can check it then. Okay, you can go and search by yourself. All right. Okay, so this is the major biological sewage treatment process that we have, and then those with the style is those that we currently use in Malaysia. Okay, right. So for those the small community has a traditional face the problem of high per capita costs, limited finances, and limited operations and maintenance budgets. So the populations are less, so the lesser levels of treatment needed. So we only often provide only the primary treatments will be provided. So however, as the population is increased, this primary treatment system must be replaced with the secondary treatment system. So the sewage treatment plants for small community are now prefabricated before delivery to the site, and these are commonly known as a package plants. So the treatment process are categorized in this manner shows in the next slide. So in the next slides, you will see how the process goes on. And then we have the most common needs for small community. First is the individual septic tanks, communal septic tanks, and impound tank. So you can check also the details in the links that I provided. In Malaysia, most of us actually are using the impound tank. And then for those rural area, it's actually they have rural area for kampong villages. They are usually mainly using the individual septic tanks. Okay, so this is the commonly the treatment system that we have for the primary and also the secondary. Okay, so after you've been treat everything, and then how we going to know the water that we after all the process is a good water or not? So we have these effluent standards. So the domestic sewage treatment is mainly designed to produce an effluent load in solid and organics. So the pollutant in sewage are measured in order to better understand and thus facilitate the treatment of the sewage as well as to examine the effect of the effluents or treated sewage on the environment. Standards have been established for the quality of effluents discharged from treatment plants to receiving the waters. These take the form of acceptable upper limits for various effluents. These provide a cleaner and safer environment that improve the living conditions of Malaysians. Okay, why the effluent standard is important? Because okay, the water that we would like to release is actually released back to the rivers. So once we release it back to the river or to the sea, who's going to use? We are going to use, and then it will back to our water cycle or hydrological cycle again. So this standard is help us to identify is it is a good quality water being released or not, and then we have two kind of standards. Okay, one is those if the water is released into the water intake, the place that we take the water for us to drink, then it will be a different standard. And then if we just release and then to the river and then nobody is going to use it, we will have another standard, right? Okay, so we have a standard A and standard B. So usually the main things that we look into for the effluent standard is we refer to the BOD, which is the biochemical oxygen demands. This is to check the microorganism that are available in the wastewater. So it cannot be more than 20 or 50. 20 or 50. So for those river that we use as a drinking waters, the BODs cannot be more than 20 milligram per liter. And then SS is the suspended solid, so we need to make sure the water that we release is a clean one. Okay, so you will see here, effluent that is discharged upstream of a river supply intake, water supply intake should meet a standard A, while the effluent that is discharged downstream has to meet the standard B. These are the standards are set by the Environmental Quality Act in 1974. Okay, so this is the details tables that you need to follow for a details one, but then usually we will refer to BOD and also so suspended solid first, right? Okay, So that's all for our lectures today, and then thank you, and I hope all of you enjoy it. So a very quick summaries for this chapter is actually wastewater treatments is actually something that I want you to know what is the process that we have, and then why it is important, and then how it's influenced to our life. So some of us, maybe we always think that why I need to pay the IWK bills. We didn't see what they do, but then this is some things that actually underground. So we have all the system. They help us to treat all the waters and then release it to the rivers to make sure that we still have a clean environment. So just imagine if all of us after using the toilet and then we didn't have these wastewater treatments, what will happen? All of our urine, your waste, your food waste, your kitchen waste, all the oily things, everything's go to the river. What will happen to our river, right? So think about that, and then you are free to ask me any questions you want through WhatsApp, to Google Classroom, or to any ways, okay, that you can able to contact me, right? So our class until here, and then I will see you guys on next class. Thank you, everybody.